You know exactly what needs to be done. The path forward is crystal clear. Yet, day after day, you find yourself stuck in the same patterns, making the same excuses, and watching your potential slip through your fingers like sand. It's not that you don't want success badly enough. It's that something deeper, something invisible, is holding you hostage in your own life. What if I told you that your inability to take consistent action isn't a character flaw? What if your weakness is actually sophisticated programming installed in your mental operating system? Programming that was never designed for your success in the first place. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this hidden code was written, who wrote it, and most importantly, how you can rewrite it using the exact same principles Napoleon Hill discovered after studying the world's most successful individuals for over 25 years. The gap between knowing and doing isn't about motivation or discipline. It's about the subconscious patterns that automatically drive your behaviors before your conscious mind even enters the conversation. And until you address what's happening beneath the surface, you'll continue to sabotage yourself in ways you can't even see. Your mind is not entirely your own. The thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, and the actions you take are largely driven by programming you never consciously chose. Since the moment you were born, your mental operating system has been receiving and installing code. Your parents' beliefs about money, success, and what's possible in life. Your early experiences of failure or achievement. The subtle messages from society about what someone like you can or cannot accomplish. The repeated phrases you heard about your abilities, your potential, and your place in the world. All of these inputs formed intricate neural pathways in your brain, the equivalent of deep grooves in a record that play the same tune over and over again without your permission. Napoleon Hill, after his extensive study of over 500 of the most successful people in early 20th century America, discovered something remarkable. The difference between the extraordinary achievers and everyone else wasn't talent, education, or opportunity. It was their ability to recognize and systematically reprogram their mental patterns. As Hill wrote in Think and Grow Rich, you have absolute control over but one thing, and that is your thoughts. But here's what Hill understood that most people miss. You cannot change what you cannot see. The most dangerous prison is the one with invisible walls. Before you can rewrite your mental programming, you must first become aware of the exact code that's currently running your life. Look at your results right now. Your bank account, your health, your relationships, your level of fulfillment. These aren't accidents or bad luck. They're the precise, predictable outcomes of your current mental programming. The brutal truth is that your life today is a perfect reflection of the dominant thoughts and beliefs you've been harboring, most of which were installed without your conscious permission. Are you ready to see the invisible code that's been limiting your life? Because until you face it directly, you'll remain trapped in patterns you never chose in the first place. When Thomas Edison was working to invent the practical electric light bulb, he famously failed over 10,000 times before succeeding. When asked about these failures, Edison replied, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." What separated Edison from his contemporaries wasn't raw intelligence or resources. It was his programming around what failure meant. While others saw failure as evidence of personal inadequacy, Edison saw it as valuable data. Each failure bringing him one step closer to success. The programming most of us received about failure is fundamentally flawed. From early schooling, where mistakes are penalized, to social environments where perfection is praised, we've been conditioned to equate failure with shame, inadequacy, and the signal to stop trying. This programming creates a neurological fear response to failure that's so powerful it can paralyze you from taking any meaningful action toward your goals. Your brain, in its primitive function to keep you safe, interprets the emotional pain of failure as danger. Once that association is made, your subconscious works tirelessly to protect you from that pain, not by helping you succeed, but by preventing you from trying anything that might result in failure. This is why you procrastinate. This is why you make excuses. This is why you sabotage yourself right before a breakthrough. Your current programming values comfort over growth, safety over success. Napoleon Hill observed this pattern in countless individuals, and noted that the most successful people had rewired this association completely. They had programmed themselves to find greater discomfort in regret than in failure, greater pain in wondering what if than in temporary setbacks. Your relationship with failure isn't a fixed character trait. It's programming that can be rewritten. Starting today, you must consciously choose to interpret failure the way Edison did, as valuable feedback, as necessary steps on the path to mastery, as proof that you're in the arena rather than on the sidelines of life. What would change in your life if you genuinely believed that failure was not the opposite of success, but an essential component of it? What actions would you take today if the fear of failure no longer held you back? The choice to rewrite this single piece of programming could be the difference between a life of regret and a life of achievement. Your environment isn't just where you live, it's what's living inside you. The people, places, and patterns that surround you daily are silently shaping your thoughts, behaviors, and ultimately, your destiny. The human brain is constantly seeking efficiency through automation. It does this by adapting to your environment and creating neural shortcuts based on repeated exposure. In simple terms, whatever you're around most becomes your normal. This biological adaptation happens whether the environment serves your growth or sabotages it. Henry Ford understood this principle profoundly when he wanted to revolutionize his thinking and break through to new levels of innovation. He would deliberately surround himself with minds that challenged his own. He created an environment that made excellence inevitable rather than exhausting. As Napoleon Hill documented in his studies of Ford, this environmental engineering wasn't just helpful to Ford's success, it was essential. Look honestly at your current environment. The 5 people you spend the most time with, the content you consume daily, the conversations you regularly engage in, the physical spaces you occupy. Are these elements programming you for excellence or mediocrity, for action or hesitation, for growth or comfort? Most people drastically underestimate how their surroundings are affecting their subconscious programming. They try to overcome limiting beliefs while remaining in the very environment that created and reinforces those beliefs daily. It's like trying to install new software while a virus keeps corrupting the system. The cruel irony is that the environment that feels most comfortable is often the one most damaging to your growth. Your brain has already adapted to it, which means it won't challenge you to evolve. Comfort, in this sense, is the enemy of potential. Today, you face a choice that will dramatically impact your future. Will you continue to let your environment program you by default, or will you deliberately design an environment that programs you for success? Will you surround yourself with people who reflect what you want to become, or those who reinforce who you've always been? The environment you choose today becomes the programming that drives your tomorrow. What is one aspect of your environment that you know is limiting your growth? And what specific action will you take this week to change it? Your answer to this question may be the first step in rewriting your destiny. Every thought you think is a magnetic force drawing similar experiences into your life. This isn't mystical thinking. It's neuroscience and psychology in action. Your brain contains something called the reticular activating system, RAS, a bundle of nerves acting as a filter for the 2 million bits of information bombarding you every second. Since your conscious mind can only process about 126 bits per second, your RAS must decide what gets through based on what you've programmed it to value and notice. This is why, when you buy a new car, you suddenly see that model everywhere. The cars were always there, but now your RAS has been programmed to notice them. The same mechanism applies to opportunities, solutions, and pathways to success. What you focus on expands not because it magically appears, but because your brain is now programmed to notice what was previously invisible to you. Napoleon Hill called this the law of attraction, explaining that you become what you think about most. Hill documented how figures like Andrew Carnegie and Henry Ford would fixate on their goals with such intensity that they began noticing opportunities others missed entirely. Their mental programming literally filtered reality differently. But here's where most people fail. They underestimate the power of their negative thoughts. Each time you think, "I'll never have enough money or successes for other people," you're programming your RAS to find evidence supporting those beliefs. Your mind then diligently gathers proof that you're right, overlooking opportunities and focusing on obstacles. This programming runs so deep that even when success is within reach, you'll subconsciously sabotage yourself to maintain consistency with your dominant thoughts. Your need for cognitive consistency is more powerful than your desire for improvement. The solution isn't positive thinking as a surface-level practice. It's systematic mental reprogramming. You must consciously choose thoughts that align with your desired reality and repeat them with the same consistency that created your current circumstances. As Hill noted, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But the key word here is believe, not hope for, wish for, or occasionally think about. Today, examine the dominant thoughts running through your mind. Are they aligned with the life you want to create? Or are they perpetuating the limitations you're trying to escape? Your thoughts aren't just passive observations. They're active instructions to your subconscious about what to seek out and create. What is the single most limiting thought pattern you've been running on repeat? And what empowering thought will you choose to replace it with starting right now? Your future is being crafted by the thoughts you think today. Choose them wisely. The past has power over your future only to the extent that it's still programming your present actions. It's time to identify and eliminate the outdated code that's been running your life. Every significant emotional experience in your life created a neural pathway in your brain, especially those from childhood, when your brain was most malleable. These experiences formed conclusions about what's possible, what's safe, what you deserve, and who you are. The problem is that many of these conclusions were drawn with the limited understanding of a child or during moments of high emotion when your rational thinking was offline. Consider this. If you tried to ride a bike at age 5, fell, and hurt yourself badly, you might have concluded, "I'm not coordinated," or "physical activities are dangerous." That single experience could create programming that affects your relationship with physical challenges for decades to come, long after the actual experience has any relevance to your adult capabilities. Napoleon Hill observed this pattern in countless individuals. People who had experienced financial hardship in childhood often developed unconscious programming that money is scarce and that financial success is out of reach. Even when they consciously desired wealth, their past was literally dictating their future by controlling their present actions and decisions around money. Breaking free requires more than just understanding your past. It demands systematically identifying the specific memories and conclusions that formed your limiting beliefs. Then you must consciously reinterpret those experiences with your adult perspective and deliberately install new programming that serves your current goals. Hill documented how Edwin C. Barnes, who became Thomas Edison's partner, had to overcome childhood programming about his social status and education. Barnes didn't try to deny his past. He reinterpreted it as preparation for his future success rather than a limitation on what he could achieve. The most dangerous aspect of your past programming is that it feels like the truth rather than one interpretation of events. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between objective reality and your perception of it. Whatever you deeply believe becomes your reality because your actions automatically align with those beliefs. Today, ask yourself, what limiting belief about your capabilities traces back to experiences from your past? When did you first learn this limitation? Are you still viewing your potential through the eyes of your past self? Or are you ready to reinterpret those experiences in a way that empowers rather than restricts you? Your past doesn't have to determine your future, but only if you consciously choose to rewrite the programming it installed. Will you continue to operate on outdated code, or will you update your mental software to reflect your true capabilities? Knowledge without action is merely potential, and potential without implementation is the greatest waste of human life. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information. With a few keystrokes, you can learn principles that took the greatest minds in history decades to discover. Yet this abundance of knowledge has created a dangerous illusion, the feeling of progress without actual movement. Reading about success, watching videos about success, and understanding the principles of success are not the same as becoming successful. Information without implementation is just intellectual entertainment. Napoleon Hill observed that the most defining characteristic separating the extraordinary achievers from the merely interested was their bias toward immediate action. After interviewing hundreds of the world's most accomplished individuals, Hill noted that they shared one critical trait. When they decided to do something, they moved immediately and decisively. Consider Henry Ford, who had no formal education or financial resources when he decided to build a motorcar for the masses. While others were contemplating the possibilities, Ford was taking tangible steps, no matter how small, toward his vision. He didn't wait for perfect conditions, complete knowledge, or absolute certainty. He understood intuitively what Hill later articulated: do not wait. The time will never be just right. Start where you stand, and work with whatever tools you may have at your command, and better tools will be found as you go along. Your brain is programmed to favor certainty over opportunity. This was useful for survival in primitive environments, but becomes a liability in the pursuit of extraordinary achievement. Every moment spent in preparation without action reinforces the neural pathways of hesitation and doubt. Conversely, each decisive action, regardless of the outcomes, strengthens the neural pathways of confidence and momentum. The most insidious form of inaction is the one disguised as preparation. Reading one more book, taking one more course, planning one more detail, these can be valuable or they can be sophisticated forms of procrastination. The key distinction lies in a simple question. Is this preparation bringing me closer to action, or is it a substitute for action? Today, you stand at a crossroads. On one path lies comfortable preparation without the risk of failure, a path that feels productive but leads to the regret of unrealized potential. On the other path lies decisive action, with its inherent uncertainties and challenges, but also with the only genuine possibility of creating the life you desire. What is the single most important action you've been postponing? And what would change in your life if you committed to taking that action within the next 24 hours? The quality of your life is determined not by what you know, but by what you do with what you know. The time for action is not tomorrow. It's now. At the core of all your programming, the master code that governs every aspect of your life is your self-image. Change this, and everything else changes automatically. Your self-image isn't just how you consciously view yourself. It's the deep, often subconscious identity that dictates what feels like you and what doesn't. Every action, result, and circumstance in your life that persists over time is consistent with this internal self. When Napoleon Hill interviewed the most successful people of his era, he discovered something remarkable. Before they achieved external success, they had already succeeded in their own minds. They saw themselves as capable, worthy, and destined for achievement long before external evidence supported this view. Their self-image preceded and then created their circumstances, not the other way around. This principle explains why lottery winners often lose everything and return to their previous financial status within a few years. Their sudden wealth wasn't consistent with their self-image, so they unconsciously made decisions that brought their circumstances back in line with their internal programming. The same mechanism explains why people who lose weight often regain it, why relationships follow patterns, and why income tends to return to a set point despite temporary changes. Your current self-image was formed through thousands of experiences, messages, and conclusions throughout your life. Every time someone significant told you what you could or couldn't do, every success or failure you experienced, every comparison you made between yourself and others, all of these inputs shaped how you see yourself at the deepest level. The breakthrough comes when you realize your self-image isn't fixed. It can be deliberately reprogrammed through consistent mental and physical practices that install new self-perceptions. As Hill wrote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." The believing part happens at the level of self-image. Consider how Napoleon Hill's student, C.M. Schwab, transformed from a day laborer to the president of the largest independent steel company in the world. Schwab didn't just learn new skills. He systematically rebuilt his self-image until his internal programming aligned with his aspiration. He practiced the thoughts, language, and behaviors of the person he intended to become until his subconscious accepted this new identity as truth. Today, ask yourself, if you already were the person capable of achieving your biggest goals, how would you think? How would you speak? How would you carry yourself physically? What daily habits would be automatic? The gap between these answers and your current patterns reveals the specific programming that needs to be updated. The most efficient path to lasting success is not to force behaviors that contradict your self-image. It's to reshape your self-image so that the behaviors leading to success feel natural and inevitable. When you truly see yourself as the person who has already achieved your goals, taking the necessary actions no longer requires willpower, it's simply you being you. What specific aspect of your self-image is most limiting your progress right now? And what daily practice will you commit to that will systematically rewrite this aspect of your internal programming? Your answer could be the turning point that changes everything. Your life today is the sum total of your habits, not your intentions, not your knowledge, your actual, consistent behaviors that have compounded over time. Habits are perhaps the most powerful form of programming in human experience. They operate below conscious awareness, executing automatically in response to specific triggers. Research shows that up to 95% of your daily actions run on habitual programming rather than conscious choice. This means that most of what you do, think, and feel happens on autopilot, for better or worse. Napoleon Hill recognized this power long before modern neuroscience confirmed it. After studying the daily routines of figures like Andrew Carnegie and Thomas Edison, Hill concluded that extraordinary achievement wasn't the result of occasional heroic efforts. It came from precisely designed habitual behaviors performed with religious consistency. The difference between your current reality and your desired life can be reduced to a handful of critical daily habits. The challenge is that habit formation follows specific neurological principles that most people ignore. They try to change too much at once, fail to identify the proper triggers, or neglect to make the new behavior sufficiently attractive to their current programming. Consider how Napoleon Hill documented Charles M. Schwab's rise from laborer to executive. Schwab didn't try to revolutionize his entire life overnight. He identified the single habit that would create the most leverage in his case, arriving 1 hour earlier than anyone else, and focused exclusively on making that automatic before adding others. Each small win reprogrammed his self-image, making the next positive habit easier to install. Your current habits weren't randomly selected. They exist because they served a purpose, provided a reward, or protected you from something at some point in your life. Even destructive habits like procrastination, negative self-talk, or avoidance behaviors are attempting to meet legitimate needs, just in counterproductive ways. Understanding the purpose behind your current programming is essential before you can successfully replace it. The architecture of habit change follows a simple formula. Make the trigger obvious, the behavior attractive, the execution simple, and the reward immediate. When you align a new habit with these principles, you can literally rewire your neural pathways until the desired behavior becomes as automatic as brushing your teeth. The most powerful approach is to focus on keystone habits, behaviors that naturally lead to positive changes in other areas of your life. For some, this might be daily exercise, which often cascades into better eating, improved focus, and higher confidence. For others, it might be a morning planning routine that dramatically increases daily productivity. Today, identify the one keystone habit that would create the most significant positive change if you performed it consistently. What specific time and trigger will you attach it to? How will you make it so simple that you can't fail? And what immediate reward will you give yourself for completing it? Your answers to these questions could be the foundation of a completely new trajectory in your life. What makes habits truly unstoppable is when they become part of your identity rather than items on your to-do list. When reading becomes what readers like me do rather than something I should do. The behavior locks in at the level of self-image. At that point, maintaining the habit requires less energy than breaking it, and your programming shifts permanently. Every obstacle in your path carries within it the seed of an equivalent or greater advantage, but only for those programmed to see it. When Napoleon Hill was researching the principles that would later become Think and Grow Rich, he discovered a pattern so consistent it couldn't be coincidence. The most successful individuals he studied had all faced significant adversity, often catastrophic setbacks, that would have destroyed most people's ambitions permanently. Yet these extraordinary achievers had developed a mental framework that interpreted obstacles differently than the average person. Hill documented how Henry Ford lost his entire fortune 5 times before finally succeeding. With each devastating setback, rather than becoming discouraged, Ford extracted valuable lessons and developed new capabilities that proved essential to his ultimate success. It wasn't that Ford enjoyed failure. It was that his mental programming allowed him to mine the hidden assets within each adversity. Your current programming around challenges was likely installed during childhood and reinforced through early experiences. If you were rewarded for avoiding problems or punished for failures, you developed neural pathways that associate obstacles with pain rather than opportunity. This programming creates a subconscious aversion to the very conditions necessary for significant growth. The fundamental shift required is from seeing adversity as something happening to you to recognizing it as something happening for you. This isn't positive thinking or denying reality, it's a strategic reframing that allows you to extract maximum value from inevitable challenges. As Hill wrote, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Consider how this principle manifested in the life of Thomas Edison. When his laboratory burned to the ground, destroying years of work and irreplaceable records, Edison began searching the ruins while they were still smoldering. When asked what he was doing, he replied, "I'm looking for great lessons. There must be great lessons here somewhere." The next morning, he began rebuilding, ultimately creating innovations that might never have emerged without the catastrophic fire. Your programming around adversity operates automatically before you're even conscious of it. When faced with an obstacle, do you immediately feel overwhelmed, resentful, or defeated? Or do you instinctively begin searching for the opportunity hidden within the challenge? Your initial emotional response reveals your current programming and indicates whether that programming is serving your highest potential. The reprogramming process begins with a conscious decision to find value in every obstacle you face, no matter how painful or seemingly unjust. With consistent practice, this decision eventually becomes automatica, subconscious filter that continuously transforms lead into gold as you move through life. Today, look at your current greatest challenge. What specific advantages, lessons, or opportunities might be concealed within it? What skills or traits could this obstacle develop in you that would serve your long-term goals? What doors might this problem open that success would have left closed? Your answers reveal the first steps toward reprogramming how you process adversity. What if the obstacles you've been resenting are actually the raw materials for your greatest achievements? What if the programming that makes you avoid challenges is the very thing keeping you from the life you desire? The choice to reinterpret adversity could be the single most transformative shift in your mental programming, turning what breaks others into the very thing that makes you unstoppable. Without a compelling purpose, even the most advanced mental programming will leave you empty. Purpose is the ultimate code that aligns all other programs toward a unified direction. After interviewing hundreds of the world's most accomplished individuals, Napoleon Hill made a startling discovery. Virtually all of them could identify a specific moment when they discovered or decided upon their definite major purpose. This wasn't a vague notion of success or happiness. It was a precise, compelling goal that ignited something primal within them, something powerful enough to override all prior programming that didn't serve this purpose. Hill documented how Edwin C. Barnes decided that his purpose was to become the business partner of Thomas Edison, not an employee, not a casual associate, but a true partner. This purpose was so specific and compelling that it reorganized Barnes' entire mental landscape. Behaviors that previously required immense willpower became automatic. Obstacles that would have deterred others became merely interesting problems to solve. His purpose literally reprogrammed his perception of reality. Your brain is designed to solve problems and achieve goals. It's the most sophisticated achievement mechanism in known existence. But without a compelling purpose, this enormous power remains dormant or misdirected. Like a supercomputer without proper software, your mental capacity runs inefficient programs by default rather than directing its full resources toward meaningful achievement. Most people never discover their definite purpose because they're waiting for it to reveal itself spontaneously. Or they're searching for something that checks every conventional box of success. What Hill discovered was that purpose isn't found, it's decided. The most successful individuals didn't wait for divine inspiration or perfect clarity. They consciously chose a purpose that aligned their talents, passions, and opportunities in a way that created maximum value for others. This choice activates what modern neuroscience calls selective attention. Your brain begins filtering all information through the lens of your purpose, highlighting opportunities and solutions that were always present but previously invisible to you. As Hill wrote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, especially when boosted by definiteness of purpose. The ultimate test of your purpose is whether it generates enough emotional energy to overcome the inertia of your current programming." A truly compelling purpose creates what psychologists call intrinsic motivation, the desire to act, for the inherent satisfaction rather than external rewards. This internal drive is far more powerful and sustainable than any external motivation technique. Today, ask yourself, if you could dedicate the next 3 to 5 years of your life to achieving one specific, meaningful goal, what would it be? What pursuit would make both your successes and failures equally worthwhile? What objective, if achieved, would make everything you've experienced up to this point, even the painful parts, suddenly make sense as perfect preparation? Your answer may not come immediately, and that's okay. The search itself begins reprogramming your mind to seek deeper meaning and higher contribution. But when you do identify your definite purpose, commit to it with such conviction that your entire neural network reorganizes around its achievement. As Hill observed in his studies, the moment you commit to a definite purpose and back that commitment with persistence and a burning desire, the universe conspires to assist you. What might be possible if every aspect of your mental programming, your habits, beliefs, responses to adversity, and daily actions were perfectly aligned toward your highest purpose? The transformation wouldn't just be in your external results, but in who you become through the pursuit. The knowledge you've gained is only potential power. It transforms into actual power the moment you take decisive action. Throughout this journey, you've discovered the invisible programming that has been limiting your life. You've learned how your thoughts magnetize similar experiences, how your environment shapes your subconscious, how your self-image governs your results, and how purposeful habits can rewire your neural pathways for automatic success. You now possess the same principles that Napoleon Hill extracted from his unprecedented study of the world's most accomplished individuals. But knowledge alone changes nothing. As Hill wrote, after decades of research, knowledge is only potential power. It becomes power only when, and if, it is organized into definite plans of action. The gap between knowing and doing is where potential dies for most people. They understand what they should do, but something in their programming prevents consistent implementation. The final and most critical step in your transformation is to bridge this gap, to move from intellectual understanding to embodied wisdom through deliberate action. This requires more than casual effort or temporary enthusiasm. It demands a systematic approach to replacing old programming with new until your desired behaviors become your default mode of operation. Consider setting up a 66-day challenge for yourself. The average time research shows it takes to establish a new habit. Choose the single most important principle from what you've learned and commit to implementing it daily for this period. Track your progress physically with a written record. creating external accountability for your internal transformation. Remember that your existing programming will resist change. When motivation fades and you'll need predetermined systems to carry you through. This is why Napoleon Hill emphasized the power of mastermind groups, structured alliances of like-minded individuals who support each other's growth when individual resolve weakens. Your environment must be engineered to make your new programming inevitable rather than optional. The path forward isn't about perfection but progress. Each time you catch yourself operating on old programming and consciously choose a different response, you physically alter your neural pathways. The key is not flawless execution, but persistent correction. Noticing when you've slipped into old patterns and immediately redirecting toward your new programming. As you implement these principles, be patient but demanding with yourself. Neurological change takes time, but it also requires intensity. Half-hearted application yields half-hearted results. As Hill discovered, the most successful people approached their mental reprogramming with the same rigor and discipline they applied to their professional endeavors. They understood that the greatest project they would ever undertake was the deliberate shaping of their own minds. Today, you stand at the threshold of transformation. On one side lies the familiar, the life created by programming you never consciously chose. On the other side awaits the extraordinary life intentionally designed according to your highest vision. The principles that will take you there are now yours. The only remaining question is whether you will use them. What one action will you take today, not tomorrow? Not when you feel more ready, but to date, to begin rewriting the programming that has limited your life until now. Your answer to this question may be the most important decision you ever make. Because, in the end, you will either master your programming, or your programming will master you. There is no neutral ground. The choice, as it has always been, is yours. But now you can make it with your eyes fully open to the invisible forces that have been shaping your reality. What will you decide? You've learned that you aren't weak. You've just been programmed that way. And what can be programmed can be reprogrammed. The same mind that has been keeping you trapped contains everything you need to set yourself free. Starting today, you are no longer at the mercy of invisible programming you never chose. You are the programmer, the program, and the inevitable result of the code you choose to write from this moment forward. The world doesn't need more people who know what to do. It needs people who actually do what they know. Which will you be?